the hidden psychology of protecting your aura from draining people. Energy flows where attention goes. In a world full of different personalities and intentions, protecting your inner light isn't just a luxury, it's a necessity. Welcome to Spiritual Wisdom, where today we uncover the hidden psychology of protecting your aura from draining people, guided by the transformative insights of Carl Jung. If you've ever walked away from someone feeling exhausted, overwhelmed, or suddenly doubting yourself, this message is for you. These powerful principles can help you maintain your emotional balance, set healthy boundaries, and protect your energy so you can continue to grow, thrive, and live with purpose. Before we begin, comment below. Have you ever encountered someone who drains your energy without saying a word? Let's explore how to stay strong, aligned, and spiritually unstoppable together. 1. Recognize energy vampires early. Recognizing energy vampires early is a core part of spirituality and spiritual awakening, because the moment you awaken to your own inner light, you also begin to recognize who feeds from it. These are the people who constantly complain, who seek attention without offering any real connection, who criticize without contributing, who turn every conversation into a one-sided emotional dump, and who leave you mentally or spiritually exhausted every time you interact with them. Carl Jung reminds us that people will do anything to avoid facing their own souls. So when someone refuses to confront their internal struggles, they often project their negativity outward and use others as their energetic support system. When your spiritual awakening becomes stronger, you can no longer ignore the emotional weight you feel after certain interactions. The sudden fatigue, the pressure in the chest, the anxiety that appears from nowhere. These sensations are messages from your soul telling you that your aura is being drained. These individuals do not always appear toxic at first glance. In fact, they often come disguised as close friends, co-workers, neighbors, or even family members. They might look harmless, but their behavior reveals the truth. They only show up when they need something. They expect you to listen endlessly, yet they never ask if you're okay. They treat your empathy as an unlimited source of fuel, while offering nothing to refill your energy. When someone constantly needs you to rescue them emotionally, and you always end up feeling worse after trying to help, that is a clear sign their presence is harming your inner world. And if you share your dreams or successes, and they respond with jealousy, criticism, or attempts to minimize your progress, that is another sign they are threatened by your spiritual growth. As your spiritual wisdom expands, your energy becomes more radiant, and that light attracts both admiration and envy. People who refuse to grow internally are drawn to those who shine. Like moths flocking to a flame, they approach to feel warmth, but they have no intention of transforming themselves. This is why spiritually awakened individuals often face more energy drainers than the average person. Your growth exposes what others suppress. You become the mirror that forces them to see what they lack. And instead of learning from your example, they try to pull you back into their emotional darkness so they don't feel alone. Your aura is a sacred field. Think of it as a spiritual garden, blooming with purpose, peace, and potential. You would never allow harmful creatures to wander in and destroy what you have worked so hard to nurture. Protecting your energy is not selfish. It is essential for your evolution. Awareness allows you to set firm boundaries, to limit access, and to refuse relationships that drain the soul. When you honor your intuition, you honor your destiny. The more you awaken, the clearer you see who truly values your presence and who only values what they can extract from you. By recognizing energy vampires early, you safeguard your mission, your inner peace, and your journey of spiritual awakening, choosing a connection that nourishes your soul rather than depletes it. If you're ready to protect your energy and rise above draining people, comment below, "I guard my aura," to show your commitment to spiritual wisdom. 2. Use psychological defense techniques. Learning to protect your emotional space is a vital part of spirituality and spiritual development, especially when you are surrounded by individuals who drain your energy or project negativity onto you. The mirror technique reminds you that their emotions do not belong to you. When someone tries to attack your confidence or peace, visualize an invisible mirror around you that reflects their negativity back to its source without harming anyone. You remain centered, calm, and confident that what they are sending out cannot penetrate your inner world. You are not here to carry burdens that are not yours to hold. Meanwhile, the method of non-reaction teaches mastery over your internal responses. Energy-draining people often survive on the emotional reactions they provoke. When you choose silence, a deep breath, or a calm gaze instead of anger or frustration, their control weakens. You take back your power. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." By refusing to react impulsively, you transform a moment of potential chaos into a moment of psychological and spiritual strength. You learn that peace is also a form of power. The technique called mental delete helps you control what enters your mind. Just as you delete spam without reading it, you can mentally delete any criticism, jealousy, gossip, or manipulation that others attempt to plant in your subconscious. You acknowledge that the message exists, but you do not allow it to stay. You do not give negativity a home in your thoughts or in your heart. You practice emotional hygiene, guarding your internal world from becoming polluted by the heavy emotions of others. When you consistently apply these 3 psychological defense strategies, reflecting negativity with a mirror, refusing to give away your reactions, and mentally deleting what does not belong, you create a powerful shield of self-respect and emotional clarity. Your aura becomes stronger, and your boundaries become healthier. You stop being a target for draining people because your energy is no longer available to feed their emptiness. You become a guardian of your own spiritual development. You learn that true power is not in dominating others, but in choosing who and what gets access to your inner light. These techniques remind you that you are allowed to protect yourself. You are allowed to say no internally without speaking a single word. You are allowed to stay untouched by negativity, even in the middle of conflict. When you guard your energy wisely, your spiritual growth becomes unstoppable. Your peace becomes undeniable, and your presence becomes unshakable. As we uncover the hidden psychology behind protecting your aura, remember that mastering psychological defense techniques is a powerful act of self-respect. Your presence here shows your dedication to protecting your energy and honoring your inner peace. Comment below, "I defend my energy with wisdom," to affirm your commitment to this journey of spiritual empowerment. Let's continue growing together. 3. Control interactions through redirection. When you realize someone is trying to pull you into their negativity, the most powerful thing you can do is shift the direction of the interaction and protect your aura before their emotional storm spills into your inner world. Carl Jung once said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." And this spiritual wisdom reminds you that you always have power over how conversations affect you. Emotional drainers often crave attention and validation for their problems. And if you are empathetic, they will unconsciously see you as someone who can absorb their pain. But your energy is sacred. You do not exist to carry burdens that are not yours. Instead of allowing yourself to be dragged into endless complaining or negative story loops, take a deep breath and gently redirect the conversation towards something more constructive. Acknowledge their feelings briefly. "I understand that must be difficult." Then pivot into empowerment. "So what can you do next?" Or, "What would a better outcome look like?" With just a few guiding words, you shift the focus from helplessness to possibility. And believe me, this will instantly change the energetic dynamic. People who feed on drama do not know how to handle someone who refuses to feed their inner chaos. This is not coldness. It is self-respect. You are protecting your aura and teaching others that communication must move toward growth, not destruction. Carl Jung also taught that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Draining people act through old wounds and unhealed patterns, unaware of the energy they spread. When you redirect the conversation, you are not only helping yourself, you are showing them a path out of their unconscious negativity. You are offering them a chance to recognize their own power instead of depending on others to rescue them emotionally. There will be moments when they resist your redirection. They might ignore your attempt to shift the topic and push harder to keep the focus on their pain. When that happens, remain grounded and calm. You do not need to force positivity. You simply maintain your boundary. If they continue spiraling into the same negative loop, you can gracefully exit the conversation or change the subject to something more neutral. This silent refusal to participate in their emotional feeding is what keeps your inner light strong. This technique becomes especially important during spiritual awakening, when your sensitivity heightens and you begin noticing how different energies affect you. The more spiritually connected you become, the more you must protect the peace within you. Redirecting conversations is one of the simplest yet most transformative spiritual wisdom practices, because you are not fighting their negativity, you are choosing not to absorb it. You are saying, "My soul matters. My peace matters." And that alone is powerful enough to shift the entire direction of your life. 4. Hold boundaries with assertive communication. Every day, as you move through life, you will encounter people who subtly drain your energy and weaken your emotional foundation. And as you deepen your spirituality and spiritual awakening, you begin to notice these interactions more clearly. Carl Jung said, "There is no light without shadow." And these draining individuals often reveal themselves when you set boundaries. They may disguise their intentions through jokes, passive-aggressive remarks, or manipulative comments designed to make you doubt yourself. This is why assertive communication becomes a spiritual shield. Your aura is not something others should be allowed to contaminate. Your peace, your purpose, and your emotional clarity deserve fierce and intelligent protection. One powerful method is asking them to repeat their insult. It sounds simple, but it is rooted in deep psychology. When someone throws negativity your way, and you calmly say, "Can you repeat what you just said?" you shine a bright light on the darkness they tried to push into you. Most manipulators rely on your silence and shock to let their words sink in. But when you call them out with a calm presence, you hold up a mirror to their behavior. The discomfort shifts back to them, and the poison they attempted to deliver loses its power the moment it is exposed. You are not escalating conflict. You are simply refusing to let harmful energy slip into your soul unnoticed. Another essential technique is the broken record method. In spirituality and in life, your inner truth must remain unwavering, and this method reinforces that truth. When someone pressures you, guilt trips you, or tries to override your boundaries, you simply repeat your statement with calm consistency. "I am not available for that. No, that does not work for me. I have already said no." Like a steady mantra, your message remains the same every time they push. You are not arguing. You are not explaining your worth. You are standing firmly in it. Eventually, they will stop because there is nothing for them to manipulate. Your consistency becomes the wall that protects your energy. And then there is the gray rock method, a technique designed for those who thrive on chaos and emotional reactions. These are the individuals Jung might describe as controlled by their own unexamined shadows, seeking fuel from others rather than facing their own inner turmoil. Instead of feeding their drama, you become neutral, calm, emotionally detached, like a silent gray rock with no reaction to provoke. Short answers, minimal engagement, no emotional entertainment for their negativity to feed on. The less you respond, the less appealing you become to their dysfunction, and slowly they drift away. Your aura remains untouchable because your attention, your most sacred energy, is no longer available to them. Through these techniques, you learn that boundary setting is not rude or aggressive. It is a profound act of self-respect. It is a declaration to the universe that your inner peace matters. Protecting your aura is an essential part of spiritual awakening, because your growth depends on the environments you allow your soul to enter. When you master assertive communication, you do not just defend yourself from draining people, you rise above them. You remain grounded in your truth, guided by your purpose, and connected to your sacred energy that deserves to be preserved. If this insight on assertive boundaries resonates with you, make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss more powerful spiritual wisdom. Share your experience in the comments below. How do you protect your aura through confident communication? Let's continue growing stronger together. 5. Invest your energy wisely. Your energy is your spiritual currency, and in the path of spirituality and spiritual development, you must spend it wisely by applying the energy investment mindset, understanding that every interaction, every conversation, and every person you allow into your space either nourishes you or drains you, either expands your spirit or quietly steals your light. When you give someone your attention, you are handing over a piece of your life, because attention is time, and time is energy you will never get back. which is why you must become highly selective about where your inner power flows. Carl Jung once said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed," reminding you that anyone who touches your aura leaves a mark, and it is your responsibility to make sure that mark doesn't become a wound. Some people show up like constant storms, bringing chaos, negativity, and endless complaints, expecting you to absorb their problems while offering nothing good in return. And although your compassionate heart wants to help, you must realize that healing others should not require harming yourself. Your energy is not a public resource. It is a sacred inheritance. And when you continuously give to those who only take, you begin to feel heavy, anxious, and spiritually dry, because their presence drains you like a leak in your soul's power supply. Your intuition already knows who those people are after you talk to them. You feel exhausted, frustrated, or emotionally scattered, and that shift in your inner state is a spiritual alarm, telling you that this connection is costing you more than it gives back. Being selective is not selfish. It is self-respect. Protecting your aura means limiting access to your mind, heart, and time, allowing only those who align with your peace to come closer, and understanding that not every person who wants you deserves you. Even those who do not intentionally drain you may be lost in their own suffering, but that does not make your energy any less valuable, nor does it make your boundaries any less necessary. When you enforce your spiritual boundaries, you send a message to the universe that you are ready for connections that honor your worth, inspire your growth, and support your evolution rather than keeping you stuck in cycles of depletion. Every day, you are making a choice to invest in what strengthens you or to fund what destroys you from within. So pay attention to who lights a fire in your spirit and who puts it out, who celebrates your growth and who envies it, who listens to understand and who listens to respond, who brings clarity and who brings confusion. Your aura is a divine ecosystem. Protect it like the rare, powerful force it is, because when you choose wisely who gets to enter your energy field, your spiritual development accelerates, your mind becomes clearer, your emotions become calmer, and your soul finally has room to rise. 6. Track your energy patterns. Carl Jung once said, "Your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." And that truth reminds you that your inner energy is constantly speaking to you, guiding you, and revealing who and what is good for your soul. Tracking your energy patterns is not simply a spiritual practice. It is a form of self-protection and deep self-awareness, because every person you meet and every environment you enter influences your emotional state in ways you might not always notice. Some people uplift you, support you, and recharge your spirit, while others pull from you silently, leaving you tired, anxious, or doubting yourself. As you become more aware of your internal responses, you begin to discover that your energy never lies. This is why conducting regular energy audits becomes a powerful tool. You pay attention to how you feel before and after interacting with someone, noticing who brings peace and who brings chaos into your life. And this awareness allows you to finally take control of your inner world with spiritual wisdom and courage. When you allow yourself to listen to your intuition, the very thing Carl Jung believed connects you to the deeper intelligence of your psyche. You will recognize that your aura is constantly communicating. If someone's presence leaves you drained, disconnected, or feeling small, that is a sign your boundaries are being crossed, even without words. Protecting your aura means choosing environments that nourish your highest self and relationships where your presence is valued, not consumed. It also means letting go of guilt for walking away from those who only take. You were not born to carry the emotional weight of others at the expense of your own well-being. Every time you honor your energy by stepping away from negativity, you align yourself with clarity, peace, and the life you are meant to experience. Spiritual awakening is not just about opening your heart. It is also about recognizing what dims your light. If you do not manage your energy wisely, you will find yourself depleted during the moments when you most need inner strength. But the moment you become conscious of what strengthens your aura and what weakens it, you transform the way you move through the world. Your peace becomes your power. Your intuition becomes your armor. Your joy becomes a silent boundary that negative people cannot cross. And the more you track these energy patterns, the more you step into a life where your inner radiance cannot be diminished. If this insight helped you understand your energy better, make sure to like the video, subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our upcoming teachings on protecting your aura. Comment below. I honor my energy and choose what strengthens me. Protecting your aura is not about shutting people out. It's about valuing your peace, honoring your inner energy, and choosing connections that help you grow. As Carl Jung suggested, true transformation begins when we become aware of what drains us and what empowers us. If today's insights helped you recognize the importance of safeguarding your energy, let this be the moment you commit to a healthier, more aligned life. Don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs this message, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom, and make sure to turn on notifications so you never miss our upcoming explorations into the deeper psychology of the soul. Stay protected, stay empowered, and keep shining your light. Why a chosen man always walks alone. The man who walks alone is likely to find himself in places no one has ever seen. This timeless insight captures the heart of today's message, because a chosen man's path is often solitary, not as a punishment, but as a sacred doorway to clarity, strength, and spiritual wisdom. In this journey, solitude becomes a teacher, silence becomes guidance, and separation becomes the very ground where transformation begins. As you listen, I invite you to reflect on your own path. Have you ever felt called to walk alone, even when you didn't understand why? Share your experience in the comments below, because your story may be the reminder someone else needs today. Let's explore this powerful truth together and learn how to apply it in our daily lives for deeper growth and lasting happiness. 1. He withdraws from superficial social norms. A spiritually awakened man withdraws from superficial social norms because he begins to see clearly how much of everyday interaction is built on performance rather than truth. He no longer feels the need to participate in conversations rooted in gossip, comparison, or the constant search for approval, because these behaviors pull him away from authenticity. What used to feel normal now feels heavy, and what used to feel comfortable now feels false. This is not a retreat from people. It is a retreat from shallow spaces where his inner growth cannot breathe. As his spiritual awakening deepens, he notices how many social exchanges are driven by ego people, speaking to be validated, not understood. People gathering to be seen, not to connect. People agreeing just to belong, not because they believe in what they say. He senses these unspoken layers, and because he can feel the energetic weight behind them, he steps back to protect his peace. He no longer pretends to fit into places where depth is unwelcome. Conversations that once entertained him now feel empty, because he can sense the difference between genuine presence and habitual noise. This awareness brings a natural shift. He seeks quality over quantity, sincerity over performance, and truth over comfort. He realizes that when the soul is evolving, the environment must evolve with it. If not, the misalignment becomes too loud to ignore. His withdrawal is simply the soul choosing clarity. With every layer of spirituality he uncovers, it becomes harder for him to tolerate spaces where he must shrink, dim, or silence the deeper parts of himself just to blend in. As he steps away from superficial norms, he discovers that solitude offers a type of nourishment that shallow interactions never could. He begins to understand that silence is not emptiness. It is information. It reveals who he is when no one is watching, and it strengthens the inner voice he once overlooked. In solitude, he hears truth without distortion, and it is this clarity that guides him toward a higher version of himself. The more he learns to trust this inner alignment, the less he is willing to compromise it for temporary acceptance. His distance does not come from pride, but from discernment. A spiritually awakened man sees beyond behavior. He sees intention. He can feel when someone shows up with sincerity and when someone shows up with an agenda. This sensitivity is not a weakness. It is the direct outcome of spiritual awakening, the sharpening of intuition that makes him aware of emotional undercurrents others ignore. And because he values depth, he refuses to remain in places where depth is absent. He no longer chases connection. He waits for the right connection. His solitude becomes a refining ground, where he grows stronger, clearer, and more grounded in who he truly is. He learns to detach from the expectations that once controlled him, and to walk his path without needing external approval. Through this process, he realizes that walking alone is not loneliness, it is alignment. It is the soul choosing truth over comfort, authenticity over conformity, and inner peace over superficial belonging. This is why a chosen man withdraws from shallow social norms, not to escape the world, but to rise above what no longer matches his spirit. If this truth resonates with you, declare it with conviction. Comment below. I walk my path with purpose. 2. He sees through illusions of connection. When you step onto the path of spirituality and true spiritual development, you begin to notice the quiet truth beneath the surface of human connection. And this is why Alan Watts's insight resonates so deeply. He sees through illusions of connection. You start to realize that many relationships in your life were never rooted in truth or emotional depth, but were built on habit, convenience, and unspoken agreements. People become attached to routines. Conversations turn into repetitive noise, and the sense of belonging you once felt begins to feel hollow when your soul becomes more aware. As your inner clarity grows, You notice how often people bond out of fear rather than purpose, clinging to each other, not because their spirits align, but because they're afraid to face themselves alone. This awareness naturally pulls you away from shallow interactions, not because you are better than anyone, but because your inner world has expanded beyond what surface-level connections can hold. You begin valuing silence more than empty chatter, authenticity more than approval, and emotional presence more than forced closeness. The more your spiritual development deepens, the more clearly you see the subtle masks people wear to feel accepted, masks shaped by insecurity, expectations, or fear of rejection. These realizations make it difficult for you to participate in conversations that lack honesty or purpose because they no longer nourish you. They only take from you. Instead of forcing yourself to fit into spaces where your soul feels unseen, you naturally drift toward solitude, a solitude that doesn't feel like isolation, but like alignment. This quiet space helps you hear your own thoughts, recognize your own needs, and understand your own truth without distraction, revealing that walking alone is sometimes the clearest expression of self-respect. As this awareness deepens, you notice that the chosen man doesn't walk alone out of pride or emotional coldness. He walks alone because he refuses to settle for connections built on illusions. He understands that genuine connection cannot be forced, negotiated, or maintained by habit. It must arise from truth, resonance, shared purpose, and mutual presence. When that kind of connection appears, it feels effortless and grounding. When it doesn't, he no longer chases, entertains, or sacrifices himself to maintain the illusion that he belongs somewhere he no longer fits. This clarity becomes both a filter and a guide, helping him recognize which relationships support his growth and which ones exist only to fill emotional space. As you walk this path yourself, you begin to trust the quiet wisdom that accompanies solitude. You stop feeling guilty for outgrowing certain people because you understand that spiritual development naturally reshapes your relationships. You stop searching for validation in temporary attention because you realize that real belonging comes from truth, not convenience. And you stop fearing the moments when you must walk alone because you finally see that these moments are not signs of loss, but signs of alignment. Moments when your soul steps into a higher rhythm that only truth can match. 3. His silence signals clarity, not coldness. His silence is not a sign of coldness, but a reflection of clarity. And you can feel it the moment you're in his presence, because a chosen man carries a kind of quiet that unsettles those who depend on noise to feel significant. What most people call arrogance is simply the absence of performance, and what they call distance is the absence of pretending. He no longer flatters anyone to be liked, no longer participates in the social games that people use to protect their insecurities, and no longer bends himself into shapes that make others comfortable. As Alan Watts once said, "When you're free to do what you want, you are more responsible for who you are." And this freedom strips away every layer of false identity until silence becomes a natural language. When you see him choosing quiet instead of conversation, presence instead of noise, authenticity instead of approval, understand that he is not withdrawing from the world, he is returning to himself. This inner clarity makes others uncomfortable because his honesty exposes their masks. People are used to interactions built on subtle lies, polite smiles that hide resentment, compliments that disguise insecurity, and small talk that covers emptiness. But he refuses to participate, and in that refusal, he reveals how much of society's communication is performance. His silence becomes a mirror reflecting what others don't want to see in themselves, and that's why they react with judgment, labeling him distant, strange, or prideful. Yet the truth is that he has simply outgrown the need for external validation. He no longer seeks applause, agreement, or permission to be who he is. He is guided by an inner compass, shaped by spiritual wisdom and deep self-awareness. And this quiet conviction creates a kind of presence that cannot be manipulated or controlled. As his inner world strengthens, solitude becomes nourishing rather than lonely. In silence, he hears the truth more clearly. In stillness, he understands himself more deeply. And when he no longer relies on the crowd to define his worth, he begins walking a path that only a few can walk with him. This is why chosen men often walk alone, not because they reject others, but because very few people can exist in the presence of unfiltered authenticity. When you stop performing, when you stop pleasing, when you stop molding yourself for acceptance, you naturally disconnect from those who only knew how to love the version of you that wasn't real. His solitude is not isolation, but alignment, and in that alignment, he discovers an inner power that can't be shaken by opinions, expectations, or criticism. His silence signals that he is no longer afraid to be misunderstood. It signals that he trusts his own judgment more than the noise around him. It signals that he has stepped into a deeper awakening, the kind of awakening Alan Watts described when he said, "To be silent is to listen, and to listen is to understand." And so he walks alone, not as a man who has lost connection, but as a man who has found the courage to live without compromise, without performance, and without the need to be anything other than who he truly is. Have you noticed how silence becomes a source of clarity for a chosen man? If this message resonates with you, share your experience in the comments so others can reflect and learn from it. And if you're just beginning to understand the power of quiet truth, simply comment, "I will listen within," to join this journey of deeper spiritual wisdom together. 4. He embraces solitude as growth, not isolation. He embraces solitude as growth, not isolation, because he has reached a level of spiritual awakening where quiet no longer feels like emptiness, but like nourishment. What once felt like distance now feels like alignment. And what others fear in silence, he welcomes as a doorway back to himself. Through deep stillness, he begins to see that solitude becomes sacred the moment he stops interpreting it as a sign of lack. It is not loneliness that surrounds him, but space for clarity, space for healing, and space for the mind to breathe after being weighed down by expectations and noise. In this state, solitude transforms from something he endures into something he chooses, and the choice itself becomes a declaration of inner growth. He no longer fears silence or stillness because he understands that silence reveals the truths that noise tries to bury. Instead of running from his own thoughts, he learns to sit with them, listen to them, and understand them. The quiet stops feeling like a reminder of what is missing and becomes a reminder of everything he has within. With every moment alone, he becomes more aware of who he really is beneath the roles he was taught to play. This is where spirituality becomes real, not in theories or rituals, but in the honest confrontation between a man and his inner world. As he lets the mind settle, presence returns, intuition sharpens, and a deeper sense of purpose slowly emerges from within. Solitude provides strength because it teaches him how to stand on the foundation of his own being. Rather than leaning on the approval of others, he realizes that constantly seeking company dilutes self-awareness, while guarding time alone strengthens the inner core. In solitude, he sees his patterns, recognizes his fears, and learns to respond to life with intention instead of reactivity. It is here, in the quiet, that emotional resilience is built. It is here that he discovers boundaries, self-respect, and the ability to separate what nurtures him from what drains him. Each silent moment becomes a lesson in spiritual wisdom, reminding him that growth often arrives in gentle whispers rather than dramatic revelations. Solitude becomes his natural state because it aligns him with the rhythm of his own spirit. He no longer feels the need to justify why he prefers peace over chaos, or depth over superficial connection. He notices that the more time he spends in stillness, the more centered and grounded he becomes. He feels less pulled by distractions and more guided by intuition. The world may still call him alone, but he knows that he is alone only in the physical sense, not spiritually, not emotionally, and not in purpose. This path allows him to hear his inner voice without interference, to see life without distortion, and to walk forward with a clarity that only solitude can cultivate. As his spiritual awakening deepens, solitude becomes the environment where he thrives. It gives him the peace needed to understand himself fully and the strength needed to move through life with confidence. In this quiet space, he reconnects with parts of himself that were neglected, forgotten, or overshadowed. He heals, he grows, and he rises not because the world applauds him, but because his soul finally has the room to expand. Solitude is no longer a temporary escape. It is a sacred home where he becomes the truest version of who he was meant to be. 5. He stops playing the social validation game. A chosen man, once he steps into a deeper level of spirituality and spiritual development, naturally stops playing the social validation game because he finally understands the heavy price of performing for approval. He no longer engages out of duty, emotional politeness, or the need to maintain appearances, as he realizes that every forced interaction drains him and pulls him further away from his true self. When he stops doing things just to be seen, when he stops bending himself into shapes that please people, he breaks the invisible chain that ties his worth to external feedback. His worth no longer depends on applause, attention, or being included. And in this shift, he begins to feel a profound inner freedom that many people spend their entire lives chasing but never reach. This transformation does not come from pride. It comes from clarity. He recognizes the subtle way society teaches men to perform: smile, even when tired, agree, even when hesitant, show up, even when empty, and he refuses to live in that quiet self-betrayal any longer. He becomes radically honest with himself about where his energy goes, who drains it, and what environments suffocate his spirit. He stops engaging in shallow conversations just to fill silence, stops attending gatherings to maintain image, and stops trying to be the likable one to avoid judgment. As he grows, he learns that constantly seeking validation is a form of spiritual poverty, a habit that keeps the soul small. So he detaches from the noise of people who measure worth through popularity, attention, or social hierarchy. He no longer needs to impress anyone because his focus has shifted toward preserving his peace, protecting his energy, and honoring his inner calling. This often makes others confused or even uncomfortable, but he understands that being misunderstood is part of awakening. He would rather walk alone than shrink himself to fit into spaces that no longer match his spirit. In this solitude, something powerful happens. His intuition sharpens, his clarity deepens, and he begins to feel a strength that does not depend on anyone's approval. He becomes selective with his time, intentional with his presence, and deeply aware that not everyone deserves access to him. Walking alone becomes a conscious act of self-respect, not isolation. He no longer fears being unseen or unrecognized because he no longer needs the world to validate what he already knows within himself. His energy is now preserved for what truly matters: his purpose, his evolution, and the meaningful relationships that nurture his spiritual development rather than drain it. If this message resonates with you, give the video a like, subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom, and share your thoughts below. Tell us how you're stepping away from the need for validation, and let's continue uncovering the truth behind reason number 6 together. 6. He disrupts the social illusion simply by being honest. A chosen man disrupts the social illusion simply by choosing honesty over performance, because the moment he stops reinforcing the unspoken rules of constant agreement, emotional flattery, and polite pretending, the entire structure of his relationships begins to shift. You see this in your own life too. The moment you stop nodding along just to keep the peace, people start to react not to who you truly are, but to the loss of the version of you that made them feel comfortable. As Alan Watts said, waking up to who you are requires letting go of who you imagine yourself to be. And when a chosen man lets go of that imagined self, he exposes the invisible contracts that others rely on. They don't pull away because he suddenly became difficult. They pull away because he stopped supporting the illusions they built their identities on. Honesty, when it is consistent and unfiltered, becomes a light that reveals the emotional dependencies people prefer to hide. When he no longer offers automatic validation, those who depended on his softness begin to feel exposed. When he speaks his truth instead of cushioning it with flattery, those who depend on ego reinforcement feel threatened. And when he stops performing emotional labor for people who only take, they interpret his clarity as cruelty. Yet nothing changed except the fact that he stopped protecting their illusions. As Carl Jung said, people will do anything to avoid facing their own souls. So when you stand in truth, you become a mirror that many cannot bear to look into. His presence becomes a quiet disruption, not through rebellion, but through alignment. An alignment so authentic that it reveals who is real and who only loved the version of him that served their comfort. This is why solitude surrounds a chosen man when he steps into honesty. Not because he is cold, but because most relationships were built on expectations he can no longer carry. Distance becomes clarity. Silence becomes protection. The absence of certain people becomes proof that he has outgrown the illusions that once required his participation. And the more deeply he chooses truth, the more obvious it becomes that authenticity thins the crowd but strengthens the soul. 7. He redefines friendship and connection. He redefines friendship and connection the moment his spirituality deepens. Because a chosen man, in a state of spiritual awakening, no longer measures relationships by how many people surround him, but by how deeply each connection aligns with truth. As his awareness sharpens, he realizes that many friendships were built on noise, convenience, or emotional dependence rather than genuine resonance. And so, he begins to value the quiet friendships, the rare ones where presence is enough, where neither person has to perform a role, entertain the other, or fill silence out of discomfort. Alan Watts once said, "The meaning of life is just to be alive." It is so plain and so obvious, and yet everybody rushes around in a great panic as if it were necessary to achieve something beyond themselves. This wisdom shapes the way he now approaches connection, because the more he awakens spiritually, the less he tolerates anything that pulls him away from simply being real. He no longer clings to relationships that depend on what he can give rather than who he truly is, because he notices how often people attach themselves to him out of need, needing reassurance, emotional labor, validation, or a constant source of strength. A chosen man in spiritual awakening sees this pattern clearly, and once he does, he no longer allows himself to be drained by it. He chooses instead the friendships that feel like soft ground, where he can sit in silence without fear, where he doesn't have to hide his fatigue, and where the connection breathes on its own without pressure or imbalance. These relationships are not loud or dramatic. They are quiet, rare, and deeply alive, built on mutual presence, on seeing one another without masks, without agendas, without trying to shape the moment into something it is not. This is why his circle becomes smaller, but stronger, because he now understands that real connection requires two awakened hearts willing to meet in truth. He gravitates toward people who don't need to fill silence with chatter, who understand that silence can be sacred, and who know that stillness often reveals more than words. He values the kind of friendship where awareness is shared, where the conversation flows naturally, but the silence flows too, where honesty feels effortless, and where both people walk away feeling lighter, not heavier. The more he honors this, the more he sees how much of his past relationships were rooted in imbalance, and how his spiritual awakening makes him incapable of returning to those old dynamics. To him, connection is no longer about proximity, but resonance. It is no longer about how often someone appears, but how deeply they understand. It is no longer about filling loneliness, but about recognizing the rare souls who can sit beside him in full presence. He respects the friendships where both sides contribute to the energy between them, where there is no competition, no silent expectations, no hidden resentment, only mutual awareness and quiet trust. And as he embraces this new way of relating, he learns that solitude was never a punishment, but a purification, revealing the few who were meant to walk beside him and releasing the many who were not. 8. He walks alone in peace, not in pain. He walks alone in peace, not in pain, because his solitude is not rejection, but liberation. And when you look closely, you see that he chooses this path not out of fear or isolation, but because he understands that truth always comes with a price that demands authenticity over acceptance and inner alignment over outer approval. His journey teaches you that when a man reaches a certain depth of spirituality, He no longer waits for the world to wake up or change before he feels whole. Instead, he discovers that wholeness rises from within through steady spiritual development, not through the shifting moods of those around him. This is why he separates himself from noise, drama, and people who thrive on distraction, because he knows that clarity cannot coexist with chaos, and peace cannot survive in environments built on superficial validation. And as he continues forward, you begin to see that solitude becomes his sanctuary, a place where his thoughts become sharper, his intuition becomes stronger, and his truth becomes clearer. He realizes that walking alone does not mean he is unloved. It means he refuses to abandon himself for the comfort of being accepted by those who fear depth, honesty, or growth. He walks this path because he knows that people who are intimidated by truth will always misunderstand those who live by it. And so he moves differently, quietly, intentionally, with a calmness that comes from knowing who he is without needing anyone to confirm it. In that quiet journey, he discovers that silence is not empty. It is full of answers, and aloneness is not a void. It is fertile ground for clarity, strength, and self-respect. He no longer tries to force connections, convince others, or shrink himself to stay in rooms that dim his light, because he finally understands that loneliness born from growth is far more sacred than belonging born from pretending. His steps become lighter as he realizes he is not walking away from people, he is walking toward himself. And that is where true freedom, true meaning, and true spiritual expansion begin. And as you witness this path, you are invited to see the same truth for yourself, that your peace matters more than your popularity, that your alignment matters more than being liked, and that your growth matters more than staying somewhere that asks you to abandon who you are. You begin to feel that the journey of a chosen man mirrors the journey you are called to make, a journey where you allow solitude to refine you, integrity to guide you, and truth to free you. A journey where your spiritual development becomes stronger than your fear of walking alone, and where spirituality becomes the ground on which you stand with clarity, courage, and unwavering self-worth. If this message spoke to your soul, let's build a peaceful and supportive space together. Comment below. I choose peace over pain. And whenever you see someone sharing this affirmation, give them a like or reply with something encouraging. Let's lift each other up as we walk this path of spiritual wisdom together. If you agree, comment 1, so I know how many peaceful hearts are here with us. In the end, the path of a chosen man is not defined by loneliness, but by purpose. He walks alone because he refuses to betray his truth, his inner calling, and the quiet wisdom that guides his steps. And as Alan Watts reminds us, solitude is not a burden. It is a place where clarity, strength, and spiritual wisdom are born. If this message resonates with you, let it inspire you to honor your own journey with courage and authenticity. If you found value in this video, please like, share, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss our upcoming videos. Your support helps this community grow, and your presence truly matters.